you'll notice my area in the middle here is kept clear. There's a reason for that. If you have something very small, you may have to build something like this. Okay? And it's just a little funnel. And it's just a little mesh net. I've got a little weight on it to hold it down. On the back, I use one of those orange reusable zip ties. I'll close it. This will sit down. The food will be inside. They'll come through the opening and get trapped inside. The dilemma with this is I was having, my stitching was coming loose. I would get little shrimps and stuff into here. I couldn't get them out. And so my wife, in her infinite wisdom, bought me what was deemed as a yabby or yabby trap. It's basically a mesh crayfish that it zips together. So you tie your bait inside, and then on each of these sections here, it's got a little opening for them to come in and out. And I found that this mesh it's a little large, but it's big enough to hold the majority of the guppies and stuff in it, and works much better. If you don't have a big enough space to do this, then you may have to go to building your own little mesh net. Plenty of things on there. Build a mesh crayfish or crawfish. Build a mesh yabby, Y-A-B-B-A, or whatever you want to do. But we're putting this in. While my stuff dries now, I'm going to catch all my guppies. The guppies and fish that I pull out, because even my plecos are breeding. I've got lots of baby plecos that I need to pull out as well. These come out. They go into my freezer. They die nice and quiet. And then tomorrow I will dehydrate all of my fish proteins. At that point, then we will begin making the those little food chips or food pellets. So let me get this in the water and onward. Okay, this is duckweed. I've got some frog bite mixed in there. Over here we have arrowroot growing. I've got it different. I've already cleaned this area here out. I have to do this about every 2 months. But what I do is I'll clean it. It goes in here. And we're going to turn this into fish food. And we'll get more into that in a minute. Now you'll notice I left maybe 5% in here. I'm not trying to clean it out 100%. Unlike a lot of people that run aquaponics and breeding systems that consider duckweed a nuisance, to me it is a food source for my fish. Duckweed can have up to 45% protein. And it helps really keep your water clear. It cleans up all those nitrates and stuff in there. That's my patch of arrowroot. I have one here. This stuff will grow and follow. I was cleaning up all the way down to here. Chop it off, put it away. My shrimp like it. Look at that. Those are little fire shrimp and rainbow shrimp. They really like eating off because it also gives us sun cover in the summer. Helps keep that water a bit cooler so my cooling system doesn't have to work as fast or as hard. All in all, duckweed is a good thing if you're running an aquaponic system. If you're running an aquarium and you always want to have it look pretty, nice and so on, don't do it. So now we've cleaned this up, we've chopped down, we've cut back our arrowroot and stuff. It'll take the arrowroot several months to grow back in. Maybe 3-4 months in the summertime. A little bit longer in the winter. This is an outdoor aquaponic system. I do keep the water at a temperature. But once we've cleaned all that out, that's what I've got so far. All of that is food for my fish. This arrowroot really likes to, it'll break off and just float around. Now, because I'm running a lot of topwater plants and things, my filter systems are on the bottom. And it's a double filter system. So if you're doing this, when you're doing this duckweed, you have to be careful, because the duckweed has this nice tendency when you run through it, it wants to sink. And if your water's not high enough, or you do it too much, your filter pumps will pull that right down in there and clog your system. Then you have to clean your filters when you do it as well. So I packed my stuff. This is this is a small little one system dehydrator that I use only for this. I use it to dry my seeds, different things. This is never used for human food. And what I've done is, because the gridding is so large, I bought some of this matting that goes like on sinks, so that it allows drainage for dishes. I cut those and put those in each of my layers, and it keeps the real fine stuff from clogging up the airway. As I said, this is a little inexpensive one. I guess that's a Clatronic. I don't know what the... I got it on sale at one of the little appliance stores. It's only got one speed, on and off, but it does the job. And I'll let this, it'll dry, and then we'll come back to it. The rest of it will sit here, slowly draining. Do not expect to keep your hands clean when working with this stuff, because duckweed is extremely small. It will grab onto everything. When you work with it, it's going to splatter. So be sure you've got an area that you can clean. I'm in the middle of a change, so this is that plastic. It's mainly, you get them for like sinks, where you can lay it on your drain pan and it allows everything to drain. They come in little squares. I just cut them in circles, and this lets the stuff, it lets the hot air get through and everything, but all of my real fine stuff doesn't drop through the larger pores, which is what would happen. Also, it makes it much easier cleaning. So I have found there's a flat side, there's a bumpy side. If you put the bumpy side up, it makes the stuff separate much easier as well. Then we'll put more of this into here, up onto here, run the dehydrator until we get all of this done. Now the arrowroot is probably the easiest to dehydrate. And see here. So I normally, what I like to do is I will dehydrate it first. And this may take you a couple of days. So I made a mistake. I collected everything on day one. I was trying to rush it. And so this is day 2, and my duckweed is already starting to smell, because I've got little shrimps and baby fish and stuff in here that's also died. So pull out your stuff that's the easiest, the quickest to dehydrate first, and then go back and get your duckweed. treat the duckweed like a paste. You cannot put it in too thick, otherwise some of it will burn due to the dehydrator, and some of it will not do it properly. The next thing that I do is, when I'm done, I lay my things down. This is a little cheap one, and so what I do is I'll lay these down with a cutting board between each one and put a couple of weights, lifting weights, on top, like those there. And what this does is I do this while it's still hot when it comes off of the dehydrator, and it will press, and that keeps these. They will actually, these things are so cheap, the dehydrator itself was melting it, and these would wind up going down. And so by doing this in between each session, I press it back flat, and I don't wind up with that coning effect where eventually this is touching the bottom one. But yeah, this thing is so cheap. It's a single setting, just on off. It was literally melting through because this had become hot, went down and was touching the other one, and there was no airflow, I guess. It does its job. It's just, I thought I'd get me a little cheap one, you know. If you try to drain your duckweed first and then put it in, you're going to have a hell of a mess. And because it'll want to compact, and this is the easiest way I found of doing it, the cleanest way, because I've tried draining all of it at once and then putting it in, and it just does not want to, it doesn't react the way that you would think it would. So this is set overnight. Now we have dried all of our plant matter. The next we need to do is clean up our fish to regulate that. We also should have some crayfish in here, which should give me an approximate size of the crayfish and what's going on with them. And let's see what's in there. In here we have several large crayfish, lots of little babies. There's one. This is one of the females. I don't see any eggs. We're going to let her go back in. That's one of the males. The red claws give that away. Let's see. Another baby. So we've got breeding going on. Now what we've got to do is sort through these. Like my blue eye there, he's going to go back in. My larger, she's pregnant, so she'll go back in. The little bottom feeders, all of those will go back in. What will not go back in are all of these little plecos and a large number of these. Come here. and a large number of all these guppies. I will separate some of the guppies for breeding purposes. Like some of these like this. Those will go back in. But the rest of these, all of these are baby plecos. Those will come out and get dehydrated. So out of last night's cleanup, we got about a cup full of guppies, little brine shrimp, and baby plecos. These will go in the freezer. It'll take them about 2 hours. They'll be dead, then I can dehydrate everything. So, that's done. Bam. This is all the fish and leftover squash ends and stuff that's a pleco. Leftover green tips and so on that will now get dehydrated, ground up, and go into the mix. So once all my plant and fish and stuff is ground up, I just keep these. I buy it when something goes on sale. I buy it. In this case, this was on sale for like €6. They're normally 30, and I got it like, I guess that was about half price. So what I will do now is blend this and mix it 50-50. The reason for this is a really high protein. I could probably do this 2-to-1 because this is really high protein. I want that high protein for my crayfish, but at the same time, this gives me the other minerals and stuff that I need for the little antibiotics and minerals and stuff that they put into these, vitamins and so on. That makes sure that I'm not depleting my fish's immune system or their vitamins and so on. Plus, I pick this up when it's low. This will get ground in. I'm about at a half now from the last batch. So this will get mixed in with this once it's ground up. And then we'll make our little pellets or cubes or whatever. So, here's the thing. First of all, let me get this down here. I find that the flakes are much easier to blend up than the sticks. This box of sticks, because remember they're going to inject air in these to make these sticks float, is 780 grams. And these cost almost as much as 1,800 grams, so almost twice as much. This is about a 7 liter, this is a 10 liter. And I normally prefer to get the flakes over the pond sticks, but it's just a matter of whichever one is the cheapest at the time. Now we've got this. We're going to blend up the fish, move all of that into here, mix it all up, and go on to the next stage. Okay, at this point we have all of our leftover vegetables that instead of composting, I froze. You know, when you cut off the ends of like cucumbers and stuff, peelings, things like this. We have our fish that we've dehydrated and went in here. We have our duckweed, our arrowroot and so on that's been growing. Then we mixed all of that with the pond flakes and blended it all, and not blended, sorry, and ground it all down. This means that from the flakes and stuff, we're getting all the various, making sure they're getting nutrients, vitamins and so on that may be missing. Plenty of protein in the plants, biocarb, that kind of thing. Then what I did was 1 cup of this is equal to 6 days of feeding. The amount of food that I feed for the top and mid-water fish like the guppies and so on. So 15 cups is equal to basically 3 months of food. There we go. So this is 1.5 months of food. That's 2, that's 1. So that's 3 months worth of top food that I would sprinkle onto the top of the water for the top feeders to help with the algae eaters like the shrimps, things like that. That packs away. The rest of this we are going to mix with simply eggs. Eggs add a caloric intake, they add a cholesterol, they add basically it's a protein binding agent for this. If you've ever made noodles is basically flour and eggs and water. Mix it together, squish it out, and poof, you've got noodles when you dry them. This is basically the same premise and process. We're mixing this with the eggs in our bowl using a standard mixer, and this is batter. These are for batter. It's not like for whipping. When we get it to a thick, firm dough consistency, we roll it out. We cut it into little squares, dehydrate it, and poof, fish food. So let's get this done and go on to the next step. At this point I have mixed my eggs in, and then I let it sit. The reason I let it sit is everything's dehydrated. I want it to be able to absorb and rehydrate all of that material. And so it's going to be here. It's a little sticky, it's a little bit of stick, and you want that consistency. Then what I'm going to do is use a little bit extra as my thickening agent, where like in bread you'd be using it to flour or whatever to keep it separate and to remove any unwanted moisture. See, I've got just a little bit still sticks to my hand, and I'll use this to finish that off as I set it up and roll it out. Okay, now we're getting to the consistency of like a hard, firm dough. See? And what I'm going to do, I've blended this in. We're going to let this sit, and once again, hydrate everything. Then we'll test it, and if we need to, we will add more until we get a nice, firm dough. Once that's done, then we'll go on to the next step. Now, used to, I would crush up and put the eggshells from the eggs in here also as a calcium. But I found the majority of that normally just ended up down at the bottom of the tank and going to no real use. It would just change the pH in the water due to the calcium. So I've stopped doing that. I would not suggest that you do that. So once it's rolled out, it's a fairly pliable dough. I'll simply use my pizza cutter cut this into strips. That one's a little thick. Works better with 2 hands. Okay, now I'll cut them into quarters, thirds, however you want to do it. that then will go into my dehydrator and dry them out. Okay, so this will go into the dehydrator. They'll get dehydrated, and then I can break them into smaller sections when I do the feeding or when I put them into the container. We still have all of that to do and all of that to go. So this will get wrapped in some plastic, in a plastic bag, to keep it moist while this dries. Then we'll repeat the process again, rolling it out, cutting it, and then out of this we'll have another 2 or 3 months of food for the fish. That's also the crayfish, the plecos, all the bottom. This is mainly for bottom dwelling stuff, and some of it will settle in on the arrow plants, and the shrimp really like it as well. Since a lot of these are not a uniform thickness, because I'm doing it by hand, some of them don't dehydrate totally in the center. So after they're all dehydrated, I'll put them into the oven at a medium heat, and I'll leave the oven cracked. And from that, then they can do their final drying for about an hour or so. Then I'll let them air cool and they get packaged. I just use a oven mitt. Right now I have main circulation. It's set for about 140, 150 Celsius. And the oven will heat up over the first 30 minutes or so. I'll let it go for a total of 2 hours. If it's already preheated, then only maybe an hour, hour and a half max, because you don't want to cook them. I'm simply wanting to remove any excess moisture that may still be in there. Alright, once they're dried, I let them sit overnight to cool, and they'll dehydrate even further. And so when I go to feed them, I just have this, put it into there, and that's what I keep it in. Runs faster with 2 hands, of course. There you go. And then I just take them when I'm putting them out. I just spread them out evenly, however many I'm putting out at the time, depending on what's in the water. And you have fish pellets. I could literally put it out that way, but by breaking them, I can disperse it more evenly, and they're not feeling that they have to compete for the food.